everyone, my name is Aspen and I am your host for Forestry Talks, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. I'm here today at the beautiful Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge in Jasper, Alberta, and we're here to celebrate our annual general meeting and conference for the Alberta Forest Products Association. I've got some great guests that are going to join me for the show this week. You're going to love them. I can't wait to share them with you. Welcome back, everyone. I am super excited to share another podcast episode with you today. I am here with Terry Ungarian, the Reeve for the County of Northern Lights. Terry, how are you this morning or this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm great, Aspen, and thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited that you could join me for this because Terry, I'm not sure if you know, but you were one of actually the first folks within the forest industry that I got to meet when I was just an intern here at the AFPA. So it's really fun to be able to bring you back on the show and chat after all that time.
Yeah, I remember that. You came up as part of a 25th anniversary of Manning Forest Products. We did a ceremonial tree planting.
Yeah.
And we got to meet there and plant trees together. That was great.
And I think we actually rode in the truck together. And what was hilarious, because I was so new to the role at the time, I was not wearing proper forester footwear to be in the bush and planting trees. And so I think we were both laughing at, I had mud all over and it was...
yeah, I do remember the road was muddy and the truck was in danger of going in the ditch, but
right.
We kept it on the road. But you definitely didn't have the tire to go tree planting, but we managed
We managed. Yeah. It was a learning experience, that's for sure. So Terry, how long have you been in your role as Reeve?
So I've been on municipal council for 13 years. I've been Reeve for 7 years now. So 13 years total of municipal councillor and probably 7 of those as Reeve. And previously that I was deputy Reeve for a couple of years.
Yeah, so a long time working in the civil service.
Yeah, it has been, and more than I ever anticipated when I first got elected. But obviously, I'm enjoying doing it. I still have a passion to do it. So I guess as long as there's still a flame there, I'll keep at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Terry, you are a regular. You make a regular appearance at our AGM. We definitely consider you one of the friends of the forest industry or a champion of the forest industry. Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with the sector?
Yeah, so I mean, prior to my time on council even, I recognize the importance of the forest industry in our municipality, in our whole region, as a matter of fact, not just our municipality, Northwest Alberta. And so, of course, once I got on council, that relationship became more evident as industry looked for those partnerships with municipalities and community members. So I'm a strong advocate of the forest industry. I realize that they're very good stewards of the land. They manage the forest, and they're our biggest economic driver we have in our municipality. So I think it's been kind of a two-way relationship that we appreciate them being there, and they appreciate the support they get from the municipalities. So it goes back a long ways, and I don't see it changing.
Absolutely. And, talking about that support from the municipalities, one of the great examples is the Community Rail Advocacy Alliance, which you were, of course, a big part of. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Yeah,
so again, that is a great example of an alliance. We recognized that we were having probably not as good a rail service as we could have in the Northwest, and then it soon became apparent that it was not just the Northwest, it was many regions throughout Western Canada that were not getting adequate rail service, which we depend on so much to get our products, whether it's ag, whether it's forestry, whether it's oil and gas. Everything has to go to port, or majority of it has to go to port, and the most economical way to do that is by rail. And so we've seen a need for some advocacy. So in partnership with AFPA and many other municipalities, we formed this alliance, and I think we're being heard by CN as our main rail carrier in our area. They've recognized what we're advocating for, and we're also advocating to both levels of government, like provincial and federal, who sets a lot of regulations and policies that control rail lines. So, I think it's another good example. And if you don't mind, I can even give you another example.
Absolutely.
Probably even something I've been more passionate about. In 2016, there was a report launched by the provincial government. It was released then. It wasn't launched. It was released in 2016 about caribou recovery. And we've seen the consequences that could have been devastating for our region. would have probably shut out a lot of industry had the recommendations from the report gone ahead. So 5 municipalities got together immediately after the report was released, and we formed what we call Northwest Species at Risk, NWSAR, and I'm still part of that. I'm one of the original members of that committee, and I'm still on it, and we've done a lot of work to push our message forward that we have to find a balance in the landscape, and we can't be shutting out industry, that we have a social economic fabric going on in our communities, and that we're at risk of losing that should there be large protection areas put in, and that won't allow industries of all types and recreation as well. So we actually even won an award from FPAC, the Forest Products Association of Canada, that they recognize the community work that we've done. So actually just about a year ago, me and 2 other committee members went to Ottawa to receive that award. So that was quite an honor to be recognized. And I know Alberta Forest Products Association also recognizes the great work that our committee has done. So those are kind of 2 things that I can say proudly that I've been part of, as Community Rail Advocacy Alliance and the Northwest Species at Risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And Terry, I can't overstate how much we really do appreciate your support on that. And you beat me to the punch on the Northwest Species at Risk group, because that was what I was going to, no, that's no problem. I'm glad that you're so excited to chat a little bit about that. And I'm glad that there was that recognition at the FPAC Awards last year. Can you talk a little bit about how maybe the work of that group has evolved since the initial forming of that group? Well,
so the initial kind of intent of the group was to kind of bring awareness to the provincial government that we weren't really happy with what was proposed. So we had open house meetings throughout the region, different municipalities. We attended the provincial government's caribou recovery open houses they had. We made our presence known. We lobbied our MLAs. We lobbied many different levels of groups of environmental groups we met with, and we had success where they kind of pushed the pause button on the recovery plan as it was rolled out in 2016. I mean, there's still a need for that to be done in some shape or fashion, because federal Species at Risk is mandating the provinces to do something, or else they'll do it for them, and we don't want to go to that level, because then a protection order will be put in, and that would not be good for anybody. For industry, for sure, and then industry, it trickles down to everybody else, that supports those industries. So we want to work with them and try to find a balanced solution. And so then we kind of moved more to a research focus, where we were doing some ground truthing on what disturbance looked like. Trying to compare notes with what the range planners were saying was disturbed and what we thought was disturbed. Then we also had worked with ABMI, Alberta Biodiversity Monitoring Institute, and did another 3-year research program that's just winding up now, where we deployed cameras and audio recording units throughout. We picked grids in a couple of the caribou ranges to just try to see what species were out there, get a count on them. So that had limited success. I mean, they did a great job, but you're just taking a small snapshot out of a large region.
Right.
And so we kind of thought that maybe we should go back to our grassroots, what we were formed for, and just be more of an advocacy group than we are a research group, because we're not researchers, none of us. We're just ordinary people that are elected councillors and want to try stand up for our region. So we'll leave the researching to somebody else, although we went through that for a few years, like I say, and so now we're kind of just recently made a decision that we'll maybe shift back and put any resources towards more just the advocacy effort, because we know that that's still something that's going to be out there, that we need to advocate for the people of our regions.
And so you talked a little bit about how you think the messages are being heard about a balanced approach at the provincial level. Are you finding any of that at the federal level, that maybe some of that messaging is getting across?
Really hard to measure that. I mean, they seem a lot more distant, harder to have those conversations with. We have met with some deputy ministers, a couple of ministers. Our local MPs have been very supportive of us, because of course they're from the region. They recognize value in the forest industry and all industries. So, but as far as getting into into with the government in power, I guess I'll say, it's been very difficult. So we're still going to keep pushing that message. And again, we have a great relationship with FPAC, who are advocates for the forest industry on all levels, but especially have good contacts with the federal people. So that's something that's going to be ongoing, I'm sure, for a while, especially as we see more and more push to protect and conserve terrestrial land. I mean, that's kind of a global initiative, and it's trickled down into Canada too, where they have kind of targets to protect large tracts of land. So we kind of see it as Northwest Alberta, low population, large tracts of land. It seems like easy picking to protect and conserve that area. Politically, they don't have much fallout from that because there's one MP represents, two MPs basically represent the whole Northwest. So if they lost a seat over it, they would still, life would go on for them. Had they tried to do a protection in, say, a large urban area, let's say Toronto, the Greater Toronto area for something, well, there'd be a lot more at stake there, politically. And so I that's the feeling that I get, that sometimes we're kind of an easy target for it.
Right. Yeah. I think, Terry, you touched on something really important about how there's support from some of the other folks that are, working within Northwest Alberta. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that there is familiarity with the area, there's familiarity with the work, there's an understanding about the forests that we have here, and so maybe there might not be that same understanding in some of the urban centers or in other parts that don't have that same connection to the forest. So what are some things that you might want people to know about your backyard and some of the work that goes on there if they don't know about it already?
Yeah, well, no, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, even though we have invisible lines on the map that are boundaries between municipalities, we're really all neighbors, right? We all have very common interests. So, I mean, I can list some municipalities: the County Northern Lights, Clear Hills County, Mackenzie County, the town of High Level, and the town of Rainbow Lake were the kind of the founding partners. And I mean, we see each other at multiple events not related to NWSR. I mean, we might see each other at a conference such as this one, or so. We share a lot of common ground, so I think that is makes it very easy when we have the same interests involved. To like I say, our municipalities have more similarities than they do differences. So that I don't know if I answered what you were kind of alluding to.
So for the folks that don't have that same connection to that area, don't understand it as intimately as you and some of the others that work in that area, what would you want them to know?
Well, and that's another obstacle we've seen, is that there's decision makers that have probably never been north of Edmonton, or maybe even been to Alberta when it's on the federal side. So these decision makers that are in Ottawa or Edmonton legislature that don't understand our region, I think it would be very valuable for them to actually come and visit our region to see that we do actually have a society going on, that we have schools and hospitals and highways and all the things that make a society. We're on a lot smaller scale in the big urban centers, but we still have people that are raising families there and having good paying jobs. And I mean, let's face it, that most of the GDP comes out of the north. That's where the resources are, whether it be timber, oil, agriculture. And so we fund a lot of the province with the assessment and the taxation, but we don't seem to get that same reciprocal back from them, whether it's through grant programs or just from recognition of that we don't want to have our areas become conservation areas, right? So it's kind of it's a trade-off, I guess. You want the resources and the revenue from the resources, but you want to protect the land at the same time. So you can't have both. You can have both, and that's what we're striving for, is looking for that balanced approach where we can share the landscape, right? We can
absolutely.
We can, and so then, and I'm not sure if you're where I think you are, but I spent 7 months. I want to say 7 or 8 months on Chinchaga Sub-Regional Task Force. I was given a seat on the task force, which is. We talked about today at some of the sessions with the deputy ministers, these sub-regions that divided the province into sub-regions to try map out, make a framework for how the land base will be used. So I spent a lot of time going out to Edmonton for meetings with the task force And so this circles back to what you were talking about previously. What would I tell those people? So we actually convinced, as a task force, we convinced them to hold a meeting in Manning, Alberta, which is located in the Chinchaga subregion. The Chinchaga subregion encompasses probably about, I want to say 80% of my municipality, County Northern Lights. Most of it lies within that Chinchaga subregion. So they hadn't done that before. Like they did the Bishtu, they did the Wandering River, they did the Little Smoky Alapesh. They did a few of them subregions already, and all the meetings were held in Edmonton, which were the majority of ours were too. But we did convince the planners to come out and actually have one in the subregion. So they agreed to do that. It was something they weren't real comfortable with, but they agreed to do it. So instead of us all going to Edmonton for a set of meetings, they come up our way. And we arranged a bus tour out into the subregion, not just in the town. I mean, the town is pretty small. We had it in a community hall there, and it worked well. I mean, we had the technology there to carry that. But we arranged a bus tour, and it had snowed. It was end of October, late October, so we had our first snowfall already. So it was kind of like you and me planting trees. It was muddy and a little bit cold and snowy. But so we took them out and there was a previous cut block, and there was some that was not cut. There was a seismic line that was used for access. So we all kind of stood in a circle and had a little talk about where we were. One of the woodland manager from West Fraser Mill was kind of facilitating it, and he said, "I want you to reach to the person standing beside you and give them an elbow bump or a fist bump or shake hands, and you can say you're actually standing in the Chinchaga subregion." So we actually had our feet on the ground in the Chinchaga subregion, and honestly, Aspen, I mean, we were standing in a cut block that had been harvested probably 20 years prior, been reforested, been replanted, and you couldn't really tell the difference between it and the one that hadn't been harvested next to it, right? The trees did very well. They were, probably 40 to 50 feet tall, averaging 6 feet in diameter, or 6 feet, 6 inches in diameter. I wish they were 6 feet.
6 feet, whoa.
We're talking California redwoods there. But, it just kind of, I think it maybe brought a bit of a realization to some of the people that have never actually been obviously some of them have never been to the Chinchaga region before, but to stand in a cut block that had been reforested and see such a healthy stand again, I mean, I don't know if that's going to make any difference in their aligning their thinking in the future, but so that's the kind of thing that I was trying to answer your previous question. What could I tell these people? I think come and visit, and we can show you how forest companies are managing the forest and what it actually looks like. I think a lot of people have this vision that they see that the Chinchaga subregion is 90% disturbed. So they have this vision of this moonscape where there's just vast tracts of land that's all been just destroyed, and there's nothing there, like I say, like the surface of the moon possibly. And really, I've flown over that area many times in my previous career when I was working in the oil field, and I got to look at it from height in a helicopter. And honestly, you'd see the odd road, and you'd see the odd pipeline right away, and maybe a power line right away, the odd gas plant. But I mean, the majority of the land, you would say, well, that is not disturbed. That is, it's recovered. Or so I think that's kind of the next kind of definition that we have to try work with, defining what is disturbed and what isn't disturbed. I mean, there's been this. It's been laid down, this is what is disturbed, and 500 meters on either side of it is also considered disturbed. And so you start doing that when you have overlapping infrastructure, then all of a sudden, you reach 90% without trying too hard. But the reality is that the landscape does not look like that. And we've done a better job in the last decade, for sure, probably 2 decades, of being better stewards of the land. And I remember, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I call it the Wild West days, when oil field was just, at its peak, and they were cutting lines everywhere, and they were building leases all over. Forest companies would come in and log huge sections. Well, we don't do that anymore, right? I mean, if there's any seismic, which is very little anymore, they use very low impact methods now. Oil well drilling, they've gone to multi-pad leases, so they're doing a lot less disturbance. And logging, the forest industry has got a lot better methods of doing things now, leaving buffer zones, and so I just think that we did do a good job of cleaning up, because we did a poor job previously, and we recognize that. So that's got to be taken into account somewhere.
Yeah, I think, I really love your comment about how education really starts with an invitation, right? And I think a lot of people would be surprised to see what a working forest actually looks like, what a reclaimed forest actually looks like. And to your point, I mean, I've been in a lot of forests that were harvested at one point and since been reforested, and I couldn't have told you the difference. And in some cases, I probably wouldn't have even known that I was in a forest that had been reforested and harvested previously had somebody not been there to tell me. So I really appreciate that. I think as an industry, we really have that mentality where it's like, well, if you have questions, if you're curious, if you don't understand or you don't know, come on out. Like, we will show you what a working forest looks like, what a healthy managed forest looks like. We'll take you through the mill. We'll show you how the operations go. And I really appreciate that communicative, collaborative approach. And it really starts with an invitation.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I'm not the only one that feels that way then, because I think that, the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think as our population of, globally, but I mean in Alberta for sure, becomes more urbanized, that we're getting that disconnect between the rural areas where the industry is and the urban areas. So people are easily misled, or the picture isn't what it really should be, as what they're being told. So I think that we got to try to get back to that somehow, and whether that's through education programs, or you're obviously not going to invite the whole city of Vancouver to come up to Northern Alberta and have a look at the forest, but somehow we have to get that message out there. And I think AFPA and FPAC and several organizations, including the organizations that we talked about already that I'm part of, we do a good job of promoting of what our region does look like, what it does and doesn't look like,
Absolutely. Terry, I want to kind of walk us back a little bit and maybe paint a picture of what your community looks like for those that don't know about the County of Northern Lights. What is your forestry community? Like, who makes it up? What kind of activity is going on? What are some of the products coming out of there? What can you share with people that want to learn more? Yeah,
sure. I'm a lifer there. I was born and raised there, so there's always been a sawmill of some sort in my neighborhood. But they were, I guess at the time, they were probably average type operations, but they've since been replaced by, so West Fraser currently owns a large operation with kind of in the middle of our municipality, and dimensional lumber is their biggest product, but they also generate electricity. Mm-hmm. They have a cogen plant, and they also have a pellet plant there. So kind of a three-pronged approach so nothing is going to waste anymore. Burners are a thing of the past, right? So what they don't use for hog fuel, they try to pelletize, and they have the most modern type of equipment there to get the most utilization out of a log that comes in there. And then further south in our municipality, we have Mercer International Pulp, formerly DMI, and again, so blessed to have them in our municipality. A huge tax base for the municipality and a huge employer for the municipality. Whether it's direct employment or services or contractors that keep that mill going. They have a big impression on our municipality. So those are the two large mills, Mercer Pulp and then West Fraser Mill. But it fans out so much that I couldn't even put a number on how many support people are, like whether it's a logging contractor that's, falling the trees and skidding them, or it's the trucking companies that are getting them into the mill, whether it's the fuel companies that supply fuel. And then, all industries like that, there's such a multiplier on people that would reside in your municipality then, right? So, so all of a sudden you need more school teachers, you need more nurses, you need more people at the grocery store because of all these people working at these mills, right? Mm-hmm. So, they've been, our municipality was founded on agriculture, many years ago, that opened up for homestead land. There was always some trappers and hunters around there, but then agriculture kind of got its foothold in there at, in the 30s, and then it progressed, and it grew the community. That's what the community was built on, or the communities, I should say, not just one in particular, but then agriculture has really made a huge change in the last few years. It's kind of gone into a large corporate type business where you don't have those small family farms as much anymore. And so even though the agriculture land is probably expanded a little bit, we just have less people doing it because of the modernization. Whereas forestry, kind of stepped in at the right time and replaced that. I mean, so now we have probably more people employed in the forest industry than we ever did in agriculture. And we also had the other third industry we had, and can't ignore it, was oil and gas. And that was very, hit a kind of a boom cycle there in the 80s, and it did very well, made a lot of people were very successful because of it, but it's a mature field and went through some downturn in pricing and stuff, so that's kind of winding down in our municipality now. Although it's still there, it's not there to the level it was. So I want to say that forestry is our number one industry now. And we're like we started out our conversation now, it's very aware of that, and we want to have that good relationship with that industry.
I'm really glad, Terry, that you connected the dots between some of the indirect benefits from forestry activity, because we know that the industry is a big economic driver in northern Alberta, but there's a lot of those indirect spin-off jobs that are created as a result, and some people might not connect the dots on that. So I'm really glad that you touched on that.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, there is. I mean, you could list off, a lot of businesses that are in business because of them, right? That they probably wouldn't be there otherwise. So. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Terry, what is something that has been maybe one of the most memorable moments or learnings that you've had about forestry over your career?
Oh, that's a tough one. Probably been lots, but planting a tree with you was one of them.
I'm touched.
But yeah, I mean, just we've had a few premiers of our province visit the West Fraser Mill in Manning, just because they did some expansions and there was some provincial grant money to help them do those expansions. So, I don't know if that's considered a highlight, but got to meet a couple premiers that come to our community, and it help do the ribbon cutting with them. Mercer just did a recent expansion on their mill, and I got to be part of that kind of celebration with them. They invited their municipal partners down, who we absolutely supported the grant. So that was really cool to be part of that. And I think just probably the biggest highlight is just watching the growth of the industry and the good husbandry, the good sustainability practices that they're using. I mean, that to me, that's very rewarding to see that they're not just here to come in, flash in the pan, take the value out of the forest and then leave town, right?
Yep. They're
here for the long term, and I think forestry is one of those sustainable industries that they plant more trees than they actually harvest, right? So if forbid that there's a huge wildfire or another pine beetle infestation or something, I mean, their management practices, they should be here for decades to come.
Yep.
And getting back to sustainable forest management, I mean, I'm a farmer myself. I'm kind of winding down, retired, but I always said when a crop was ready to harvest, you harvest it or you're going to lose it. It'll have no value to it, right?
Yep.
And I kind of look at forests and the boreal forest kind of in that same light, because I've seen too many instances where there's been fires or bugs or windstorms have taken down merchantable timber that if you left it, it would all end up on the bottom of the forest floor. And then, I mean, another forest will grow back, but you've lost some value in that stuff.
Yep.
And so I think that by managing it properly, by harvesting it when it's time to harvest it, and reseeding it again or reforesting it again, just is a very good cycle to have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you touched on that, Terry. Talking about some of the benefits of forestry and the benefits that you might lose if it were to burn or die, decompose naturally. Carbon storage is a big part of it, I'm sure, as you know. And another one, this is just a really funny anecdote that I heard when I was in Ottawa last week. Mayor Wendy Landry of Shunya, which is a community in Northern Ontario, she said, I don't know about you, but I like to use toilet paper. I don't want to be using leaves. So if we're going to be using products like that, then we might as well, figure out how to manage our forest sustainably and get the products that, we rely on every day, but also figure out how to manage the forest for all of those benefits as a whole, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's, you take away the pulp industry or the forest industry and imagine the lives without that. And like I say, something as simple as toilet paper or, a lot of products that come out of the pulp industry. I realize that newsprint is kind of on the way out with the electronic world, the digital world coming out, but there's still a global demand for pulp that we can't meet right now. And actually, one thing I learned in this journey too is that pulp fibers are now being used in the textile industry.
Yep.
They're actually making clothing out of it. So, so I mean, that'll take some pressure off some of the other sources, because there's not enough sources of cotton and other synthetics to keep up with the demand right now. So there's another niche that the forest industry can capture, right? So yeah, they've done a very good job of diversifying. I mean, the old vision of a mill being just a mill that brought logs in and cut 2x6s out of it, and then the rest went in the burner, and that was it. That's those days that we've changed, right? We've evolved out of that.
Yeah, those days are over.
Yeah, and I think that's probably going to be never ending. I mean, who knows what's going to be next, right? Whether we're creating energy now, which I think is I could consider a green energy, and so yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah, I continue to be, amazed and inspired by some of the innovation that's going on in the sector. And, every day there's something new to learn. And I love that. Terry, before we wrap up, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, like I mentioned earlier, a continued guest at our AGM. What keeps bringing you back? What do you love about coming to these events?
Well, who doesn't like to come to Jasper in the fall? Yeah. But you know what I said last night? I think I said it to my wife. I said, this is just a great conference. Everybody is like-minded here. Everybody's so familiar faces you see, like yourself now. I met you a few years ago. And I mean, you just can't walk into the hospitality room without saying, oh yeah, good to see you again. Haven't seen you for a year now, but everybody is, it's just a really warm environment. And, and like I say, plus being at Jasper isn't so bad either,
right.
But although never really get away from the lodge much, but so yeah, it's, I mean, really, truly, the reason I'm here is because I'm a strong advocate for the forest industry, and I want to keep that relationship with Alberta Forest Products Association and the mills, and so I come to support that. Yeah. And but then just make some good connections as always, and every time I leave here, I always take something away. I learn something that I didn't know before, and I guess we never quit learning, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Terry, we so appreciate your support, and I'm thrilled that you were able to join me on the podcast. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered quite a bit, Aspen.
Right?
So yeah, and I appreciate you letting me be part of your show. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Yep.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Forestry Talks, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. We've got some more great guests lined up for our AGM this week. Stay tuned for more, and if you're curious to learn even more about forestry in Alberta, check out our website, loveabforest.ca. I'm your host, Aspen Dudzik, and I'll see you next time.
This series is proudly produced by the team at Road 55. Road 55 creates content that connects. For more information, check our website, www.road55.ca.